My name is Dr. Tamar Andrews, and welcome to another episode of Parenting During a Pandemic. For those of you who joined me last week, we're going to continue on our journey, understanding how the child's brain works and what helps make a successful and happy family, even during a pandemic. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And as always, if there are questions, you are more than welcome to put them in the chat box. I will probably start about halfway just to give it a look and see what questions you have. And then we will save time at the end for all of your questions and answers. So let me get started by sharing my screen. Give me 1 minute. There we go. And I am going to, let's see, slideshow, play from the start. There we go. Okay. And there again is my contact information for anybody that's interested. You are more than welcome to write down my email address. It's simply my name, tamarandrews@ucla.edu, or my cell phone number, and you can reach me that way. So first of all, let's talk about consistent routines. And I think this is really important to know. First of all, I know that life sometimes throws us a curveball and it's hard to stick to routines, but one of the things I want to show you here is this car driving on the road. We have a routine when we drive in our cars, right? We get on the road, we all know that everybody follows the same direction on the same side of the street. And when you come across a car that looks like this and you're speeding down the road, your heart starts to beat this way. That beating, that very fast beating, actually is your body releasing cortisol and adrenaline. Those are two chemicals in the brain. And if you were with me last week, remember that those brain cells want to try and fire and wire together in order for children to have structural memory, memories that they can take with them for the rest of their lives. When something like this happens and the cortisol and the adrenaline are released, it actually blocks the healthy kinds of wiring in the brain. And if it happens too often and there is too much stress, then what happens is the wrong kind of structural memory starts to form. And we will go much deeper into that specific topic another week. But suffice it to say for today that what we need is we need healthy and consistent routines where the heart beats regularly. We need routines also so that we can form the circadian rhythm, the body clock that tells us when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when we have to go to the bathroom, when it's time to sleep. I actually thrive on routines. I have not used an alarm clock in about 30 years, believe it or not. In fact, today, my daughter just got married last night. We went to bed very late, and my husband said to me, "Do we need to set an alarm so you'll wake up on time?" And I said, nope, because my body, no matter what time I go to sleep, when it's an off night, my body will always wake me up at the same time every morning because I have gotten into a routine. Children need that even more, not only for their own health, in order for them to set up quality routines in their lives, but also for you. Imagine if you want to go out or if you want to take your children with you. Knowing what to expect, knowing what their routines are, make life so much easier. My other daughter had to drive here yesterday for the wedding, and she's got two little children. One's only 2 months old and one's 2 years old. It was so easy for her to drive to the wedding, which is a 2.5-hour drive, because she knew when her daughter's nap time was. So she planned her day around the nap time so she could drive during nap time. We also want to be able to know what time we can expect our children to go to sleep, because if they go to sleep when they're too tired, it's very hard to get them to sleep. So now imagine if nobody followed the rules on the road, we would always be in a state of anxiety. Imagine when parents don't follow routines, our children are actually always in a state of anxiety because they don't know what to expect next. So it's very important that we stick to routines. Now, I know some of the questions you might not even have thought of yet, but there are some questions that I can anticipate, which are, what happens when we go to the in-laws' house for dinner on a Thursday night, a Friday night, or a Saturday night, and dinner doesn't start until very late? If you have a successful routine going 6 days a week, or 3 weeks out of the month and 1 week is off, you're okay, because your child also needs to know how to be resilient and how to be a little flexible, but just a little flexible. Flexibility is different than not having a routine. And then bonds. It bonds the family together as well. Why? Because, for example, our family always does Sunday morning breakfast together. In fact, right now in the United States, it is morning, and my family is all preparing breakfast. And once this lecture is done, we're going to all have breakfast together. My children, having grown up in the house, always saw that Sunday morning breakfast was very important. So it bonds the family together because your child from an early age starts to understand, what do you hold sacred as a family? Does it hold sacred Sunday morning breakfast? Does it hold sacred that every Saturday night we go to the grandparents' house for dinner? Does it hold sacred something else? And so it's very important that those bonds are always put together as sacred. And wedding guest, getting something from the back. The next thing that we have is establishes expectations. So when our children can understand the expectations that they have, there are no power struggles in the house. Expectations can be things such as, when it's nighttime, I expect you to go to sleep at a specific time. The other expectation is that when we go to the grandparents' house, there's my granddaughter crying. When we go to bed at night, we're going to all give each other a kiss. When we go to the grandparents' house, I also expect you to give grandma and grandpa a hug. Even though you might not like the perfume she has, we have certain expectations in our house. Many times I watch how the royalty in England, it's all over the tabloids, especially in the United States, where we're obsessed with the royalty. I don't know why. But it's always interesting to see how well behaved for the cameras, even their youngest children are, because they have set up these and established expectations with their children. But it's important that we also let our children know what is important before they get in trouble for it, because then it's all punitive and disciplinary. It also creates a calmer household. When children are valued, when children feel that they are part of the family, that not only are they expected to hug and kiss grandma, but grandma and grandpa love when they come over. They feel like valued members of the household, and they have a sense of, I belong here, and stress is reduced. But if they're never going to grandma and grandpa's house, or they're always told to be quiet or stop touching everything, and they feel like they are treated differently than everybody else in the house, many times they feel more stress because they're not feeling like they're valued members of the family. It also, and here's a really good one, it gives your child confidence and independence. And the reason for this is because they take pride in getting it right. So for example, if they don't love kissing grandma and grandpa when you go visit, or grandma might hug a little too tight, but your child doesn't fuss, even if your child is only 2 years old, that's the time to hug them in a small little hug and say, I am so proud of you for giving grandma a hug. She really enjoyed that. And now your child takes pride in getting it right. I did the right thing. It boosts their confidence, and it also boosts their independence. And next time, they might hug grandma, and the next time they'll hug grandma, and eventually they're going to hug grandma because they like it themselves. It also establishes healthy and constructive habits. So what does that actually mean? So healthy and constructive habits means that I eventually know that I'm supposed to go to sleep at a certain time of the day. And it's interesting, I think I've shared with you, I have 4 grown children. My children always knew when it was bedtime because they just felt it in their bodies. And they would simply lie down. I have pictures of my children laying down on vacations where we were in other countries and the time zone was off, but they were sleeping even like right by the dining room tables in the restaurants. And we had to allow them to do that because they now had these healthy habits of going to sleep and waking up on consistent routines. It also helps take away some of those battles of waking up in the morning for school, waking up in the morning to get their day going. And it also helps you because when you have to go to work and you have things you need to do, you know that you can count on your children to establish those healthy routines and do it the right way. Now, here's where it matters during a pandemic. This is a really stressful time. Nothing is the same as it was. And so, especially during a pandemic, keeping your children in the same routine and normalcy is more important than ever. Even though you might have been in quarantine now for months, make yourself a promise that starting tomorrow, when your children wake up, you are going to wake them up at the time they need to learn to wake up for school, get them dressed, and get them out of the house. Even if you make up a reason why you're going out of the house. We have to walk the dog, or we have to go to the store. No matter what it is that you're doing, you've got to get a routine going. Now, if you have not had a routine, here is something I'd like you to try for those of you that struggle with routines. Most of us have one of these. It's a cell phone. What I want you to do is tell your children that you're going to go through the day and take a picture of each thing that is important in your routine, and then print out those pictures. Once you print out those pictures, I want you to put them one on top of the other on a wall somewhere in your home. And that way, when it's time to do a routine, you're not the one telling your child what to do. Because did you know that the average child hears about 5,000 commands a day? I want you to think about that. 5,000 commands a day. Wake up, get up, get out of bed, stand up, sit down, eat your chicken, eat your chicken, eat your chicken, get in the car seat, get out of the car seat. Come on, let's get out of the car seat, out of the car seat, stop that, don't touch. Many of us have started, and I'm guilty of this as well. When I had my first child, I was only 23. I'm only 20 now though. And so I had my first child at 23 and I didn't know any better. So I was one of those parents barking orders and commands all day. It makes for a very stressful household, and I don't want to be a taskmaster. I want to enjoy being a parent. And so if instead you have this routine in pictures on your wall, imagine instead of yelling, "Come eat dinner," you instead say lovingly to your child, "I can't remember what comes next. Can you go look at the pictures and tell me what happens after bath time?" And your child will run to the pictures, and then they'll run back and remember one of the previous slides, that they take great pride and independence is fostered when they get it right. So if your child runs to the picture and says, "Dinner, dinner, dinner," and you say, "Oh my gosh, you're so smart, you're so right, that's exactly it. Thank you, thank you, thank you." Now your child will actually jump into the dinner table. Why? Because they knew what to do and you didn't. And they feel that sense of ownership of getting it right during that moment. And the last thing I'm going to say before I stop and take some questions, I want you to realize that raising a child, number one, your child is a novice, not an expert, a novice, brand new. So imagine if your child, and I use this example all the time, your child has been dropped into the Amazon forest. They have no supplies, they have nothing on them. The backpack is actually yours in the picture. You have all the tools for their survival, they have none. If your child steps off the path and towards a snake, are you going to hit them? Are you going to yell at them? Or is the better thing to do to sit down with your child and describe what a snake is, why it might be deadly, and how to avoid snakes? Your job is to give your child all the tools you have in that backpack and more for them to be able to survive in the Amazon forest if, God forbid, you should disappear. And it's important that you think of that, because your job is really to guide your child, to mentor your child, to coach your child, not to abuse your child. And again, I am guilty of also being the mom who yelled a lot at my first child. And I don't want to be that mother anymore. And so I have tried to put better tools into my arsenal than I have. I am going to stop sharing now and see if there are any questions from any of you. And hi, Melanie, nice to see you as well. So what are some of the struggles that you all face in setting routines, in setting consistency, in trying to get some kind of normalcy to your life, especially now that there is a pandemic? And I'll take any questions, actually, any questions you have. It's been really difficult to get my son to sleep on time. Olivia, can you tell me some of the difficulties? So for example, do you have a routine? He sleeps like at 10 p.m. Wow, that is late. Yes. And not only that, but it doesn't leave you much time at night for you to have some time alone to do things that you need. And I bet you would love to be able to anticipate him going to bed at 8. So he's 5. So first of all, a 5-year-old, I hope he's not napping during the day. Let me give you all then, and Olivia has opened up something I wasn't going to go into today, but I think you've actually made a good segue. So let me talk to you a little bit about the brain and how the brain works for a minute. Remember I told you about that heart beating like this and the adrenaline and the cortisol. When you wake up in the morning, your cortisol levels are at their highest. It's a natural phenomenon in order for us to be able to wake up really fast and run away from dinosaurs, I think. And then as the day goes by and you have some normalcy, your cortisol levels go down. And then somebody almost runs you over in the car and it jumps up again, but then it starts to go down. You get really hungry, goes up, and then you eat and it goes down. And as your day goes, your cortisol levels start to drop. You cannot fall asleep at night at all unless your cortisol levels are at a certain threshold or below. Many of you might even understand this. Somebody did something wrong to you in business, or you have a lawsuit, and you lay in bed at night thinking about what you could have said, what you should have said, and if it happens again next time, this is what I'm going to do. And even though you know you should be falling asleep, you can't fall asleep because your cortisol levels are artificially raised because you're stressing out about something. For children, until they get into a routine of their cortisol levels naturally dipping at night for them to fall asleep, you're going to have to help them do it. So especially for a 5-year-old, and 5-year-olds are all about learning as much as they can and running and jumping and doing as much as they can. They don't want to go to sleep because they have, we call it FOMO, fear of missing out. And so their heartbeat might not be going so fast, but the cortisol is still in their brains, keeping them awake. So Olivia, my first suggestion to you, and we can keep following up on this if you try these things and it doesn't work, play should end by about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And at 6 o'clock, they should have dinner. By 6:30, 7 o'clock, they should be in a relaxing bath. So you can have some toys, but no music blasting in the house, no loud noises. If you do have music, maybe classical music with a very low beat, like 60, 70 beats per minute, because our body rhythm tends to go with the music, right? So the faster the music, the more we dance, and the slower the music, the slower we walk. And then it should be 1 or 2 stories, again, where you're reading the words very slowly. And then you softly turn off the lights. And you might sit there and rub his back a little bit. And then he goes to sleep. Now, it's going to take about a month. He's 5 already. He doesn't have a good routine. This is not going to happen overnight. So you've got to give this a month. I'm telling you, sorry, not sorry. And what you might do is if you have, if you can, barter or negotiate, I should say, with him, tell him that you're going to help him learn to go to sleep. And you can walk out of the room, but if he'd like you to stay with him, you'll stay. but not in his bed. You're going to stay in the doorway, and I want you to grab your cell phone and tell your best friend or your mom or anybody else that you're going to call them every night at about 8:30, and you're just going to talk very boringly and very quietly while he starts to drift to sleep. A few days later, I want you to move that phone call into the hallway and then just start moving farther and farther away until he learns to put himself to sleep on his own. So try that. He hasn't been active during homeschool, so I feel like he wasn't tired enough. Oh, Olivia, then the other thing you've got to do is you've got to wake him up in the morning, and it's exercise in the morning. Let him get some of that adrenaline and that cortisol out in the morning. And then I would say for a 5-year-old, another really good 30, 40 minutes of running, jumping, playing, biking, about 3:30, 4 o'clock. But he's got to have that energy output, absolutely. So again, for Olivia, I would make those pictures and tell him that you're setting up a routine. Blame it on me. Hina says, my trouble is my better half is not following the routine, and then the kids follow. Oh, yes. So it is really important that you have those pictures then for your better half as well, or he will no longer be better. He will be worse. So those pictures, that's why I love it. It's for everybody in the household, even for grandma and grandpa. Tell them that you're trying to set up a routine. You're working with a doctor, Tamar Andrews, and you've got to follow those pictures to the T. Make sure the time is on them as well. Should daily routine be the same for school days and Saturdays or holidays? For example, waking up 6 a.m. for school days and 6 a.m. for holidays. Oh, that's a great question. So if you can get the 5 days a week or 6 days a week down pat, then yes, just make sure that your children know that before they go to bed, the night before a holiday, etc., that tomorrow's Sunday and tomorrow mommy and daddy sleep in late. So when you wake up tomorrow, I'm switching the picture. And look, I'm switching the picture. So when you wake up in the morning, you'll see a picture of mommy and daddy still sleeping. And I've put some fruit out the night before. So if you're hungry, you can go get it on your own. And you only need these pictures until that routine is established or they're older. Once the routines are established, I think you're actually good. But that's the whole point, is you want to have routines that when there's a flexible need, like a holiday or travel or Sunday, that you can actually have the children follow suit. Bedtimes are out the window now as school is online at the moment. We go to bed around 8:30, but by the time my 7-year-old and 9-year-old finally drifts off, it's 2 hours later, and then it's a struggle to wake them up in the morning. How can I get them to sleep quicker? So Juby John, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, again, my fear is that the kids are not playing and getting enough of their energy out. Now, when we say getting their energy out, I do have to share with you, it's not just energy. As a matter of fact, humans were not built to sit like this in chairs. And I want to, again, the brain. So your brain has different parts that function for different reasons. And we need to fire on as many parts as possible in order for it to feel like it's been successful and done its job for the day. Once your brain has done enough work, and I'll get to what that means in a minute, then it needs to go to sleep, because during sleep time is when it decides these chemicals are going away and I don't need chemical memory anymore, and these chemicals and brain are going to go this way, and we're going to reinforce them by creating structural memory. If you remember from last week, I don't use the word short-term memory or long-term memory. I use chemical memory and structural memory. And so what that means is when, for example, let me give you an example of a basketball player. Who doesn't love basketball? We always think of athletes as like stupid. They just play sports. But in fact, nothing could be more different. When you are playing basketball, you've got to know where the other side of the court is and the basketball hoop. You've got to know who the players are on your side and who are the ones on your side by recognizing faces and jerseys. You've also got to recognize how far the distance is to the hoop, where the lines are on the side, not be distracted by people yelling in the background, bouncing a ball, being ready to catch a ball. And if you watch a functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, of an athlete in a team sport, you will actually see that the whole brain is lit up. Right now, me talking to you, not so much, because you're probably only using a very small part of your brain. Especially young children who need to create that foundation of learning. Their brains need a balance, now get this, a balance of cognitive energy, physical energy, and emotional energy, all three of those things. So cognitive energy is probably what they're doing in the online school, that's the learning. Physical energy is the outside playing, but it's not playing, it's actually activating all those parts of the brain that they need to activate in order for the cognitive memory to really take hold. And the last thing is emotional energy. That is the hugs and kisses and I love you and you're working really hard and you're doing a great job at this. So it needs to be equal. If it's not equal, then our life is not in balance. They're going to have a hard time falling asleep. So I know this is hard on you because you're the ones, the parents, who have to organize all of this. But those three energies are equally important to do all day long. So make sure that that stuff is happening. And again, this might not all work, but I want you to start following some of these steps so that eventually you'll get to a point where it'll either work or we'll figure out what needs to change. Let's see what else there is. Bedtimes are out the window now. And then it's a struggle to wake them up in the morning. How can I get them to sleep quicker? So again, the going to sleep quicker and the waking up appropriately are all tied together. This all has to do with the normalizing the routines, setting up expectations, and consistent routines with the three energies expended equally throughout the day. I want you to try and start that and see if that can help as well. He also started saying no to everything I ask. Wow, yeah, I gotta say the no is because their life is in upheaval and they're trying, remember, children want control and independence. That is what we strive for as humans. Imagine being barked at 24 hours a day and giving 5,000 commands. Especially in a pandemic, we have more commands than ever because of washing hands, putting on masks, you can't do this, you can't go there, you can't touch this. So adding those pictures, putting them in charge of following those routines works. And try to give children as many opportunities as possible for control and independence. They're also home all day. It's difficult coming up with things to keep them busy, engaged, other than study time. Any ideas on some activities they can do during the day? Painting, yoga, dancing, singing, reading exercises, running out of ideas. Okay, here's one, and I wish I would have thought of this, but I didn't, so maybe email me and I'll send you a few. I've come up with some really cool scavenger hunts. Scavenger hunts meaning we're going to make dinner tonight, but let's change it up. We're going to have dinner outside. And so we're going to go on a scavenger hunt to find things to decorate the table. And I don't know what you have where you live, but we're going to find 3 pine cones, something for each number. So it's, like 1 feather, 2 rocks, 3 pine cones, 4 flowers, 5 twigs, and then you print it out on a chart or you write it down and you go on a scavenger hunt. The other thing that you can do is make sure that they're using all parts of their body. So it might be a good time, Juby, for you to also take up running or take up power walking. Or instead of, if you do drive anywhere, park in the farthest parking spot possible. You can also create some other kinds of games outside. So for example, if you know what hopscotch is, create a hopscotch court with chalk. Chalk is some really great stuff to get. And things like that. But I'm happy if you email me, I'm happy to send you some of these as well. And then one more question. I never put my son on timeout. Oh, okay. That's, Olivia, I'm going to give you a short answer, but we're going to cover discipline one whole Sunday. So first of all, timeout doesn't work, and I'll tell you why. One of the things that we need to do with our children is we need to give them what we call anticipatory socialization. How is life going to work for you later on in life? So if your son does something inappropriate and he's 30 years old, are his friends or his spouse going to put him in timeout? I don't think so. Instead, what's going to happen is they're going to walk out on him. So for my own children, for example, instead of ever giving them a timeout, I actually walked away. And I'll give you an example, and I'll never forget this because it worked. And I was like, wow, this really worked. I have 4 children, and my girls are 10 years older than my boys. So we had gone to dinner, and at the time my girls were 12 and 10, and my boys were 2 and just a baby. And my girls started at the dinner table at a restaurant near where we live, started saying things that were not so nice to me. And I very nicely said, you know what, that's hurting my feelings. Can you please stop? And they just kept laughing. And my husband also, he's not listening to this, my husband also didn't do anything to stop them. So I simply took my purse, I got up and I walked out. I left my husband with all 4 kids and I walked home. And about maybe 45 minutes later, they're all home. And my husband's like, where'd you go? What happened? And I said, well, the girls were making fun of me. I asked them to stop. And not only did they not stop, but you didn't stand up for me or say anything. So I just didn't want to be with you guys. My feelings were being hurt. And I didn't say it with an angry face. I did it just like this. I have never been disrespected, I should say, at the dinner table ever since. And now my oldest is 20 years later. So that's what happens in life, is when people don't like what you're doing, you walk out. If your child is old enough to understand that, you simply walk out. Now, let me get to a question in the Q&A. Hold on. My partner comes home very late and leaves early in the morning, so my child needs to stay up till 9 to spend some time with the parent. I cannot put him to sleep before he comes home from work. He wakes up in the morning at 9, and then he is active all day, physically as well as in studies, and then sleeps at 3. He's 4 years old now. Wow, that's a hard one, because a lot of us have situations where one or the other parent comes home very late, and we don't want them to miss out on seeing that parent. If this schedule works for you and the child takes a nap in the middle of the day, then great, that works for you. And so by your question, I don't know which part doesn't work for you, so maybe retype something. Let's see, thank you. Let's see, I never did. I just wonder what works. Thank you. Okay, and there's the Q&A from the question box. Okay, so maybe add some more. And we do have time for more questions. I don't know if there's any others. But if not, I do want to go back to the timeout question if I have time until there's other questions in the box. So here's a couple of pointers about when the child is misbehaving. For example, let's say you have a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, and then you have a 1-year-old, and the 4-year-old hits the 1-year-old or does something that's inappropriate to the 1-year-old. Instead of putting the older child in timeout, what I want you to try is pick up the 1-year-old and say, you didn't like that, did you? I didn't like it either that he hit you. And just pick up that child and go into another room and close the door. I can already tell you what probably will happen is your 4-year-old or your 3-year-old will come and start banging on the door and screaming and yelling. Great. That means that they have registered that they're mad and that they don't like what the sibling and the mom or the dad did by walking out. You're going to keep that door closed for as many minutes as the child is. So if the child is 3, the door is closed for 3 minutes. If the child is 2, you're only going to close the door for 2 minutes. And again, only if it's safe. And then come out and say, are you ready to play nice? And you just, again, no mean or inappropriate facial expressions, no yelling. Remember, you're a guide helping your child through the Amazon forest. And you put the baby down, and if the child does it again, you go back out of the room again, maybe adding another minute to this. But what you want to show your child is that they are always in control. Your child is always the boss of themselves. They can only control what they do, but they can't control what you do. And by walking out, you are showing them what people in the world are going to do to you if you treat us inappropriately. Anticipatory socialization. And then the question is, how is this going to work when school starts. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, now I get it. So what you might need to do, you have two choices, and I don't know, you didn't write what time your partner leaves in the morning, but what you might want to do is flip it, so that your child and his or her parent sees each other in the morning for breakfast instead of at night. And why is that? And it really should be flipped, because at night when the parent comes home, it's exciting. There's the excitement and the adrenaline and the cortisol go up again because they want to play, et cetera, et cetera. And not only that, but that parent becomes the fun parent and you become the mean parent. And so what you need to do really is flip it upside down, so that in the morning when the cortisol is the highest, if they want to do tickles and games and playing, it happens in the morning. And then at night, your child actually goes to bed, and explain to your partner that this is just not going to work at night. It has to happen in the morning. My son spends half the time with me and half the time with his father, co-parenting style. What do you suggest we do in regards to routine and boundaries, considering the parents have different personalities, values, and styles? Probably why you're no longer together. What I would probably do is establish a routine together. You are more than welcome to blame it on me. And if you need, I'm happy, if you send this question to me, I'm happy to type an answer in an email to you and send it to you, and you can forward it to your ex, and then come up with a schedule that works for both of you. And I can also include some of the detriments that will happen if you don't follow the routines and the consistency and the long-term effects. Because I will tell you that there are a lot of long-term effects. The most important one, I want you to understand this, and I didn't get to that part yet. Remember how I said the cortisol has to go all the way down in order for you to fall asleep at night? What happens though when the cortisol is always up here? When I don't know what comes next, even though you can't see it on my face, there's always a little bit of anxiety because I can't anticipate what comes next. That system that regulates the cortisol and the adrenaline actually breaks. And then there's always cortisol and adrenaline always flooding the brain. In extreme examples, you see that in people who come out of abusive relationships, out of prison, and things like that, where they're always kind of jumpy and always nervous, or always quick to yell and quick to anger. That is because they don't yet know how to regulate their cortisol and the adrenaline. So if the systems are different all the time for a child, and they have never been able to establish consistent, appropriate routines, that system that regulates will actually break. And for the rest of their lives, remember structural memory, for the rest of their lives, they will have trouble managing stress and anxiety. And it is very hard to fix because it's now become structural memory. And everything you do in childhood lays the foundation for the rest of your life. You can't simply undo structural memory. That's how important it is. And I know from experience, because I was 23 when I had my first child, and then ended up paying a lot of money for therapy to help her because she needed to overcome some of the stress of her earlier life. So I'm not here preaching because I'm perfect. I'm here sharing with you my own experiences because I've gone through them. And as a result, spent the next 20 years studying the brain and how to fix it. And so now our household is very calm, very easy, very chill. Yes, yeah. And yeah, Olivia, feel free to email me anytime, really. I'm pretty good about emailing people back as well. All right, any other questions from anybody here? Because we have about 17 minutes left, and I don't want to waste your time. And so I'm here to answer anything at all. Otherwise, I'm going to share, until that happens, I'm going to share another story with you. I've got two actually to share with you. We talked last week about bribery. We were talking about potty training, and I remembered a story that little, not true, but a story that actually will hone it in for you. There was an old guy, and he lived at the end of a cul-de-sac, so a street that had no, and you couldn't go past it, like a curve. And one night, these kids came out, teenagers came out and started playing basketball, and he couldn't fall asleep. So he went outside and he said, please, 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 can you stop playing basketball? And they basically went, no way. And they stayed and played basketball all night. The next night he comes out and he says, you know what? I made a mistake. I actually love the sound of you playing basketball. It makes me remember when I was young. Here's $5. You can each have $5. Keep playing. And they did. They played all night. The next night he comes out and he says, listen, I'm on a pension. I didn't get my check yet, but here's another $1. Can you all keep playing basketball? Here's $1 for you. And they keep playing basketball. The next night he comes out and he says, listen, I didn't get my pension check yet. I don't have any money, but can you please keep playing basketball? And they went, if you're not going to pay us, we're not going to play basketball. And they left and they never came back. The moral of the story, we are all born with intrinsic motivations that we can easily take out by affixing an external motivation to it. So it works both ways. We all start off, going in our diapers, but if we have some external motivation, we can actually do the opposite, and we can potty train with bribery. The other side of this, though, and this is the more important one probably for most of you, is when we feel we are at wit's end and that backpack of ours in the Amazon doesn't have a tool that fits for this particular situation, we will often resort to candy, chocolates, cookies, bribery, anything, because we're at our wit's end and we don't know what to use. Be careful with those and use them very sparingly, because eventually you might create a child who only does things for the rewards. If you don't know, I am a professor, and one of the things that I hate the most is the fact that we have to grade students. Why? Because the question I hate most from my students is, will this be on the test? Education, learning should be intrinsically motivated as it is from birth. Young children start off in life wanting to learn as much as we can, and our educational systems have ripped that out of them by affixing a grade to it. How many of you have ever had a class in high school and college where you got an A and you were so proud of yourself, and now you don't remember any of it because it never went to structural memory? It only stayed in chemical memory for as long as you needed it to get that A. So my little story from you. Okay, more questions. I have difficulty following routines and sometimes procrastinate. How do I make myself more disciplined? And can I have a few tips? Oh, Konstantinos, this is great. So first of all, that is where this comes in. If you need to, make everything an appointment with yourself, everything an appointment, and have your phone send you a reminder. You can have a reminder for everything. And not only that, but make yourself a promise simply to not neglect a reminder. But at the same time, allow yourself a little flexibility and say to yourself, because you're not going to be able to change overnight. However old you are, that's how long it got you to be into a procrastinating state. And it might take you that long to get into a complete routine state. So what you really want to do, and I procrastinate sometimes as well, what you really want to do is you want to say, I'm going to make one change. Remember what we talked about last week, that the brain can only handle a certain amount at a time. So pick one battle. What is the one thing that you want to change in your life? Maybe it's exercise, maybe it's waking up at a certain time. Pick one thing and make yourself a goal that for 1 month you are going to stick to that goal. And then in a month's time, you're going to add one more thing. So never try to put it all on yourself at once. Pick achievable goals, because then you'll feel successful and then you'll feel confident to go into the next thing. Let's see, my daughter of 9 years hardly falls asleep and wakes up early most mornings, and routines don't work with her. How do I manage her stress levels? So you're exactly right. Her routines are off exactly because of her stress levels. So what you've got to do is you've got to manage her stress. And in fact, I was just speaking with Anastasia before this started that maybe one of the lectures we're going to do is on mindfulness. Mindfulness is a method by which you start to relieve some of your stress. But let's see, who is this? This was, also from Lucy. Lucy, I'm going to give you some really quick tips to manage stress. What I want you to do is on paper, because she's 9, she can already start writing, or you can write for her and she can read it. I want you to have her list 2 of her or 3 of her biggest stressors. What are the things that bother her the most? And then I want you to start talking and writing down what's the worst thing that can happen. Have her out loud talk about what's the worst thing that will happen if this doesn't happen or if this does happen. And then start laying those things out. If you can, Lucy, email me, and I'm going to send you the 5 quick tips by email of how to manage that stress, and see if that can work with you helping guide her, if you will. And it's a pretty quick, it actually works fairly quickly. So email me and I'll send them to you. Remind me though what I'm supposed to send you to. Okay, let's see. I think that was it. Okay. All right, any other questions? Yeah, and again, you're all more than welcome to email me, and I'm more than happy to help you. And not only that, but your questions help guide us, those of us who are planning our lectures, to see what it is that you'd like to hear lectures about in the future, not only from me, but from other professionals in the field for certain topics. I will also share with you, for those of you who have stress issues, and especially for the 9 and the 5-year-olds who have trouble sleeping at night, I am actually working on a research project. I know many of you have heard of attention deficit disorder. Oh, do we give them the floor? Oh yeah, you can, Fatima, if you have a question, you are more than welcome to ask it out loud. And I'll go back to my topic in a minute. All right, Fatima, when you're loud, we'll have you talk. Sure. My son wants to play with me, pretend, role play. He's an only child, but I really struggle to do it. Olivia, what do you mean by struggle to do it? I need to know. Oh, anything I want to do, he doesn't, and I get bored. Yeah, role play is really important at that age because it helps them alleviate some of their stress. I know. Maybe give yourselves a time limit. Say, I'll do this with you for 10 minutes, and give yourself a time limit so you know when your out is. I get too frustrated managing kids and shout sometimes. I feel it might affect my kids. I do. How do I manage? Oh, Vishal, that is going to be also another topic about yelling. I actually have, and I'm just curious, by a show of hands here, if you can tell me how many of you would be interested in something I call the no yelling therapy group. I was actually talking about putting together a no yelling therapy group about how to handle it, what effects it has. Remember structural memory. If you yell too often, your child will simply have structural memory that you are the yelling parent, and causes anxiety. The short answer is they might end up becoming teens who don't talk to you because they might be afraid that you're going to yell at them. So take a deep breath, maybe walk away, drink some chamomile tea, but that's a whole lecture. I don't yell, but my mother does. Oh, so invite your mom to this as well, Olivia. How do we get children to fall asleep as soon as they're in bed instead of chatting with siblings or playing at bedtime? So that's a great question. I was one of 3 girls, and we used to talk at night. I think you need to allow them that chatting. That's actually sibling bonding time. So if they're chatting, then what you need to do is give them a time limit. And you might want to put a sand timer in the room for like 15 minutes. There's also a clock you can buy that has like a sun and a moon or a timer. But not something that buzzes loud, because that'll bring the cortisol back up. But just send a reminder. So say, if you guys want to talk, that's fine, but I am going to give you a reminder that this is going to be over in about 10 minutes. And then in 5 minutes, give them another reminder that in 5 minutes that it's going to be over, and then give them a 1-minute warning. And when you give the warning, make sure that it's very low and slow. 1 minute. And remind them that they only have 1 minute. Oh, everyone lowered their hand. Okay, so I think we're going to do a lecture on No yelling lecture. Okay. And you can invite anybody to these lectures, by the way, anybody at all, which is absolutely fine. And share my email address again. Yes, I'll type it into the chat box right now. So very easy. And it's tamarandrews@ucla.edu. Real easy. My name at ucla.edu, and you are more than welcome to email me. The only thing is, remember that most of you are in the Middle East, and so you've got, I think, about a 12-hour time difference than me. So give me about 24 to 48 hours maybe to respond to you so I can get it to your own. How do I train my 4-year-old to sleep on her own? Well, again, I don't know if you came in late, but it might be that you have to kind of ease her out of it because she's 4 years old. And so she's had 4 years to learn to not sleep by herself. Give me just one. If you need timing, just telling him I'm going to be done in a few minutes. And so what you want to do is, the easiest thing to do is probably to lay with her in bed or sit on her bed for a couple nights, and then tell her that you have to do a phone call your mom, a good friend, and sit on the floor by her bed, and then in the doorway, and then outside in the hallway. I don't like crying. And I do want to share something else with you, especially for those of you that still have babies or young children. Remember again, the Amazon forest, okay? So most of you are going to sleep at night with somebody else in your bed or your bedroom, your spouse, right? Or if you have a newborn, with a newborn in your room. So we give birth to these children, we put them in the Amazon forest, and then we tell them, I know you're in the Amazon forest and you're going to hear crazy noises sometimes, like sirens and birds or animals, but I'm going to have you sleep in a room all by yourself. I'm an adult. I know how to navigate the Amazon forest, but I'm going to go to sleep at night with somebody else in my room. Imagine how that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old child feels. They're by themselves in a room and you're with someone and cuddling. And they want to feel that warmth and that security as well. So you have to recognize that that is happening and that they might not be comfortable yet in the Amazon by themselves. So you have to train them that going to sleep at night in the Amazon forest is completely safe because they're in their room, they're in their bed. Maybe ask them if they want a stuffed animal or a night light on, something else, but never a bright light. And the other thing too is you want to keep your home, if you can, as cool as possible. Every study shows that you cannot sleep when your body is too warm, because another thing that happens when you fall asleep is your body temperature dips a little bit. So it's better to give them covers and a cooler temperature than warm temperature. So make sure that they're not overheated. And then slowly ease them into feeling secure and confident enough to sleep on their own. My son is squeezing me like my belly or bum. I've told him no, but he just won't listen. Should I do your suggestion and walk away? Yes, exactly. There are touches that are appropriate and there are touches that are inappropriate. And simply teach your child that there are private parts. Not that we don't talk about them, because you want to be able to talk about those parts, that if your child has a pain on their penis or on their bum, whatever it is, that you want them to be able to tell you about it. But at the same time, those are private areas that are simply for them alone. And your private areas are your private areas as well. And if you don't respect me, and use that word, even if you think they don't understand, they need to learn the word respect, then I can't be here with you. So you explain it just once, no words the second time, and you walk away. Again, however many years he is, that's how many minutes you walk away, and then you come back. When you come back again, every time they do it, simply say, I didn't like that, and walk out. No expression, no yelling, no screaming, just walk away. Now remember, chemical memory, structural memory. Chemical memory tells you that it's going to have to happen over and over and over in order for that chemical memory to switch over to structural memory. So don't be despondent. Don't be feel like a failure if your child doesn't listen to you after the first 20 times. It might take 30. Just be prepared. How many of us have told our spouses something that we don't like and they don't remember? right? It takes time for humans to remember things and go from chemical to structural memory. All right, we have time maybe for one more question. Otherwise, I will tell you that it has been a pleasure and an honor sharing some of my own parenting experiences with all of you. I will be back again next Sunday. And I think we're going to put the no yelling group into the queue. What happens in the no yelling therapy group stays there. It's like therapy. And you also might want to send questions my way for other topics that you'd like to see on some of these parenting seminars. And thank you so much. Yes, we had a very lovely socially quarantined wedding last night in the backyard, and she looked beautiful, and everybody's still very excited. Thank you, thank you. Take care. And Olivia, thank you. And I will see you all hopefully next week. Bring your questions with you. Bye-bye.